Okay, I think we're live. Are you still there, Laura?
I am.
Okay, awesome. So I'm going to just wait a few minutes and let people start joining on.
Great.
Go look at the chat box. So we do have a few people coming in. And for those who are joining us here in the webinar room, if you could just type in that you can hear us, just say yes, or I can hear you, or you should be able to hear me. This is Robin talking, and you should be able to see a screen that says be a 5-star business. And so if you can hear that and see that, if you can type something in the chat box so we know that at least the technical part of this stuff is working.
Yeah, and ideally hear me as well.
Yeah, also do you hear both of us because Laura is on as well. So the chat box should be on the right-hand side of your screen. So Morgan says hello. So hopefully Morgan can hear us. For anyone else that's out there listening, just let us know if you can hear us both. Wendy says she can hear us both, and that's always good. Yay, now lots of people are saying they can hear us. So that's always good. And while we're going to start in just a couple of minutes, but while we're waiting to start, if you guys want to let us know where you're from, just a city or state or country, if you're outside of the United States, we would love to hear that. So we got some people from California and a bunch of people that can hear us. So that's good.
Oh, good.
Folks from Lexington, Kentucky, which is a great place, Des Moines, Iowa, New Mexico, New York. Oh, now they're coming in too fast. I can't keep up.
Excellent.
I'm in Colorado, and you're, I guess, in Las Vegas, you just said right now, Laura, right?
I am. Yeah, I'm here for a trade show, but headed back to Colorado today.
Awesome. So we have St. Louis, Montana, Oregon, California, Connecticut, South Carolina, Ohio, from all over the place, which is awesome. Well, we're going to start in about 2 more minutes. So we're just getting everybody a chance to join us. So we appreciate everyone being here. And this is going to be a great session. I think what Laura had asked me before we got on this call, what everybody does. So if you just post in the chat box, if you're a daycare boarding facility owner, or are you a trainer, or are you in a shelter? Like, what is your, a little bit about your background, so she kind of knows. I told her that I thought mostly it would be daycare and boarding facility owners, but I just want to see if that's correct. So Terry said Terry's an owner. Mm-hmm. Daycare boarding, cage-free, daycare boarding. So yeah, I think so far mostly Wendy does group and private training. Owner, daycare boarding. Oh my gosh, they go from like nothing to like a whole bunch of people all at once. Daycare training, boarding, grooming, training facility, boarding and daycare and boarding, retail, daycare and boarding, marketing and event coordinator for a pet lodge, daycare and boarding. That's Tori. Owner of a store, daycare. So tons and tons of daycare. Pet health campus. I love that.
Ooh.
Grooming manager and new daycare owner. Boarding, daycare training, and some grooming. So yeah, the majority of people are in some. We have Lauren said she's a GM. There's an employees and they do training and marketing for them. So lots of daycare boarding, primarily a brick and mortar kind of building. So that's what we had talked about before, Laura.
Okay.
So turns out that's the case. Well, what I'm going to do, so my name's Robin Bennett, for those of you that are just joining us, and I am the co-founder of the Dog Gurus, and we obviously help pet care businesses launch, grow, and profit. And we have asked Laura Nelson to be on this call today and present some information to us. Laura is the director of marketing for Broadly, and she's going to talk about how to be a 5-star business and really looking at one of the concerns that we get most often, which is not just what do you do with bad reviews, but how do you actually get really good reviews? And that, I think, is how you can end up becoming a 5-star business with those 5-star ratings. So I'm going to turn it over to Laura. And if you guys have questions as we go along, feel free to post them in the chat box. And I'm going to be monitoring the chat box, and we'll get to those, as many questions as we can at the end. But otherwise, Laura, I'm going to turn it over to you to take over this presentation.
Awesome. Thank you so much, Robin, for having me, and to all of you who are attending either live or on demand. So excited to bring this material to you. As Robin mentioned, my name is Laura Nelson. I'm the Director of Marketing with Broadly. If you're not familiar with Broadly, we are a client communication platform that helps local businesses manage leads and manage kind of the life cycle of that customer relationship from hello to thank you, to that follow-up of getting feedback about what was that experience dealing with your facility, for example. So what we're going to talk about today is this concept of being a five-star business. And I'm really going to focus on that thank you piece. What does that review mean? Why is it important? How to get them, how to manage them. We'll cover a lot of ground on that follow-up, on that back end. But first, before we go into that, I want to talk a little bit about this concept of customer experience. And you might have heard this already before. It's kind of a popular buzzword in business these days. Why is this important? Well, reviews are really the output of what that customer experience means for you guys, right? And as business owners, as GMs, heard a lot of titles where you're really running the show at your facility. When we kind of went through who's on the call here, you guys define the customer experience, right? You're running the business, and you're in control in terms of what that experience is going to be like, for owners and of course their pets. And when they give you feedback, hopefully they're defining the customer experience in terms like these, worth talking about. Wow, so helpful. 5 stars. That's the output of that customer experience. Your customers, those pet owners, are going to be the ones that market your customer experience. So that's where reviews really come in and help define what your business is all about, especially as it pertains to the online world. So broadly, when we talk about all of these concepts, we really want to put that in human terms. And we always kind of tie back to this persona. I call her Elsie. I named her after one of our employees at Broadly, because we can't rather disregard or forget about who that person is at the end of the day, who we're trying to reach and who we're trying to satisfy. So, I call her Elsie. She's a busy mom. Of course, she's a pet owner, but she's also a homeowner as well. And she's got all of these modern conveniences in her life. We call her the modern consumer because she's really managing her life and her family on that cell phone. What do I mean by that? She's a Netflix subscriber. She uses Uber. She's an Amazon Prime subscriber. So all of these things really meet her needs when I'm talking about convenience. And convenience is a big word too these days, right? How do we as business owners really meet Elsie here at that intersection of quality and convenience? I want to pause on Amazon for a second, because this one is a great example of delivering that convenience and talking about why is it so addictive, right? Why am I so much more satisfied buying toothpaste on Amazon than driving a few blocks to get it? Well, Amazon is successful because it makes these things so easy in a world that it wasn't so easy before. And maybe you're like me and you love seeing that box on your step after a day or two past your order. Amazon has really transformed this idea of getting a commodity like toothpaste into a better experience than what we had before. So think about this and what you're willing to pay for in your own life, right? We're willing to pay a little more for something like that Prime Amazon experience, and it does translate to your own business as well, to your facility. People will pay more for this. LC will pay more for this if you deliver that Amazon-like experience. So how does that kind of tie in to marketing, right? Where are we headed with that? The LCs of the world and you and I, when we're being marketed to, have a complex journey. When we're evaluating a business, a local provider, when we're deciding where to board our pets, or when we're deciding who to hire to clean our ducts on our homes, or whatever the case may be. And as business owners, we are challenged with reaching the LCs of the world through all of these methods. So the world's gotten a lot more complex, and I'm not going to focus on every step of the way, but as you can see, a lot of these tactics take people down that journey of learning more about a business, about reaching out, interacting, and finally deciding whether to board their pet at your facility. So again, today we're not going to focus on all of these points, but I do want to focus on reviews, which are a huge point, or a huge factor rather, in considering a business and deciding whether to bring a beloved pet there. So it all really starts with online search, right? And you've probably done this a lot in your own lives, where you're starting a local search with Google, and the majority of searchers are doing that. That's how reviews are starting to surface when we're doing a search for a business. And this happens whether you get a referral or recommendation from a friend or family member on a facility, or if you're just new to a community and you don't know who to call. This is a familiar, we call it a category search for pet boarding for a community in California. We do this hundreds or thousands of times a week when we're trying to solve a problem. And the results are pretty familiar to us all as well. Google's showing us a listing of links above and below this 3-pack, we'll call it, and here it's 4 because there's an advertisement in it, showing us what it thinks are the most relevant results for this type of search. But because Google is so simple, our eyes really go to this map and are especially drawn to the first few choices below this map. And the reason for that is because there's colors and indicators here where there aren't always elsewhere on the page. And reviews really do play an important role here because they help us differentiate across choices that are otherwise just kind of a phone book type of listing. So if you're LC, if you don't know who to call and you see a result like this, you're using reviews to help make some decisions, to move you down that path of consideration and to take a hard look at what your options are in your community. And if you're doing a quick pass like this, if you're making a split-second decision and choosing among a lot of providers to narrow your consideration to just a couple, the choice becomes really obvious that you're going to look at someone like Woof. You might give WAG Hotels a call. You might think about Crow Canyon, but something like Elite Canine Daycare and Spa just doesn't measure up to the other choices in your area. So again, this is obvious to a lot of us. We're here because we want to dig a little deeper into reviews, but just wanted to set a baseline for how consumers, how we as consumers as well take a look at this problem in our area. But of course, it's not just limited to to Google. That was foreshadowing Facebook as well. A lot of platforms are getting into this game, right? You see this across Google, Yelp. Here's an example of what that looks like on Facebook too. And you've probably seen this in your own feed quite a lot. The Facebook algorithm really likes to surface these types of questions, and people are staying within the Facebook ecosystem to ask these questions too. Hey, who would you recommend? These posts get amazing engagement, but yet you might notice too that reviews and reputation really factor into what looks good in that response too. So Carrie has asked for local recommendations on pet boarding places, and you see a couple suggestions below, both for Silver Brook Kennels and for Calypso Boarding Kennels. The great thing about this is when someone shares the link for a Facebook page for a facility, that review, that rating is front and center. And the good thing for both of these facilities is that it's a good rating. So they're looking good when that rating or when that recommendation is made. So just showing a couple options of where that surfaces when a local consumer has that initial question. And again, this should probably be familiar to you guys already. You're bought into this idea of reviews, so you may already believe that this is important to growing your business. And here's a few stats that kind of reinforce that point. The majority of customers today, 88%, trust online reviews as much as word of mouth recommendations. So those conversations you might have had with a neighbor who also owned a pet, one-to-one, are happening online, one-to-many, across Google, Facebook, Yelp, as I've shown in those examples. But these other two stats might be of equal import to you as you think about your review strategy in terms of getting reviews and interacting with them. 85% of consumers, again, a large majority of consumers, think that reviews over 3 months old aren't relevant. And I've certainly noticed in my own reading of reviews as well. If I don't see recent reviews for, say, a restaurant or a service, I might question whether it's still in business or whether the quality of service is consistent as it has been in the past. And the majority of customers agree as well. This, of course, is consistent with how Google views reviews as well. They're looking for recent reviews, consistent reviews. And so that's another key point to think about as you're building out your strategy. You want to stay consistent. That recency translates to relevancy online, both for consumers and for the Google algorithm. And then finally, this kind of dovetails back to that marketing touchpoint graph that I previewed a few slides ago. 50% of consumers are visiting a business's website after reading positive reviews. And that's really the action that you want people to take, right? If they see great reviews for your facility, you want them to take that next step. Hit up your website, learn more about your team, learn about your services, your rates, etc. I'm going to move them down that consideration funnel to the point where they're calling you, sending you an email, engaging with your team in some other way. So these all just reinforce again the importance of reviews to your facility. And of course, you may be bought in already. As Robin mentioned at the beginning of the webinar, I really want to spend some time on how to get reviews, how to get systematic about this, and then how to manage reviews once you have them as well. And of course, I'm going to leave time at the end for your questions too, because there's no way I could cover the scope of all of the possible conversations that happen online. But I do want to provide some guidelines and some food for thought. And first, I'll start with review generation. This is really important to make a process in your business. You really do, in order to get great feedback online, you have to make this a system that everyone on your team is bought into and doing. And this requires asking every client for their feedback. I know that, that may sound daunting, or you may feel like you're bothering clients by asking for their feedback, but it's something that you really have to inoculate into your system. And the reason why is that most clients of yours, if you're in business and have been and have a steady stream of clients, most of them are satisfied and they're happy to give you feedback when asked. They just need to be prompted to do so. And we'll talk about the ways, of course, but this just is the first step in showing that you care. So we'll talk about the ways. How do you do this, right? Lots of different ways you can go about this, and you all have your own setups, but I'm going to talk in generic terms of what this might look like in terms of the different channels of communication that you have with clients. And of course, the first one is in person. You could be checking out a pet, after a stay, for example, and just ask how satisfied they are from check-in to check-out, and how their experience was dealing with your team. The good thing about asking in person is that you're making the ask personal. You're making eye contact. You're getting immediate feedback verbally, right? But the downside to asking in person is that this great feedback, this immediacy, doesn't always translate online, right? It might reach you personally, one or two of your team members, but it doesn't go to the masses in terms of delivering that feedback in a Google review or a Facebook review, for example. So this is a great first step, and I do recommend combining it with others, but we've found in our experience that it's not always enough to get the job done. So what else might you be doing? Sending surveys. And when I'm talking about surveys in this context, I mean good old-fashioned pen and paper. Maybe you send along an envelope for them to send it back, or maybe you have someone fill out a survey on the spot. Either way, I'm referring to something a little more detailed than a review with options for multiple choice or fill in the blank. And the great idea, or the great benefit of surveys rather, so you get a lot of good insights. If you're asking very pointed questions, you'll get very pointed responses back from your clients. And ultimately, these responses can help you, improve upon your business processes at your facility, or in your interactions with owners' pets. However, traditionally, pen and paper surveys have been too much of an ask. The longer the survey, the less likely you are to get a response, and it can come across a bit impersonally. So again, you're getting good insights, but the more insights you're looking for, the less likely you are to get complete responses, or as many responses as you might like. And consider comparing that to surveys in the medical field as just an example. We all get them following an appointment, but they are quite lengthy, and it can be a chore. So this kind of survey might be an imposition on your clients as well. So again, good insights, but again, doesn't always translate online. Tough to get that pen and paper response to a digital format that's really going to benefit your business and help you win that next client. So what are your other options? Well, we're talking about online reviews. We're talking about technology platforms. What we recommend at Broadly is to use technology to get those reviews online. What I mean by that is to make the ask through digital formats, whether it's an email or a text, to catch people in their natural environment when they're most likely to leave you great feedback where it's going to help you guys. The easier you make it for your clients, the more likely they are to follow through. So what does that look like, right? I mentioned email or text. This is just an example of what it looks like from the Broadly platform. The left side is a text, right side is an email. Again, capturing people when they're in their natural environment, when they're on their device or their computer and likely to follow through with it. The less friction there is when you make that ask for feedback, the more likely they are to follow through and really just take the few seconds to leave you a great review. And I'll counter this with, or I'll compare and contrast this rather to a link, say, on a paper invoice. There's a lot more hurdles to typing an address in online or expecting someone to find your listings. If you're linking them directly from text or email, you're removing some of the hurdles for them to leave that 5-star feedback. So we went through, the personal ask, surveys, technology. What we really recommend at Broadly is to apply technology, but also preview that with the ask in person. And a lot of the companies that we work with give the clients a heads up. They say, hey, I'm going to follow up with you via email or by text. Let us know how we did. That way, that end client is expecting that communication and is prepared later to give you a response because you did make that ask personal. So that's a little bit about how to generate reviews, and we can certainly go into details there. The more automation you have, the better. Systems like Broadly can directly integrate with your instance of PetExec or Ginger. So that's a great option to have that makes it friction-free for you and your team as well. But next I want to get into review management because I know that this is a huge area for you guys. You're probably getting a lot of great feedback online if you have a system in place, and you may have had some scenarios or maybe looking for some guidelines in terms of how to respond and how to engage with people, your clients or community members online, once they've followed through and given that great feedback. So I want to start with some basic guidelines to responding and interacting with these reviews. And I get a lot of questions about, hey, should I just respond to the negative reviews, or should I just say thank you to the positive reviews? What should my policy be? And my strong recommendation here is to respond to everything that you get online. I know it sounds like a lot of work, but it is totally worth it. You want to show everyone who comes across your listings that you care, not just clients who are taking the time to leave you feedback, but visitors as well who are considering bringing their pet to your facility. You've got to show that you're active online, and you've got to let your readers decide what your engagement on that means. So I'll take you through some more specifics, right? Because this is a little bit esoteric. So what does that mean? So positive reviews, this is easy. If people have taken the time to talk about how much they love bringing their pets to your facility, all you have to do is give them a simple thank you, right? And what are the steps to this? Well, of course, you've got to log in to your Google listing or to Facebook, and I'll walk through the steps of logging into Google in just a second. But right here, you just say, hey, thanks for taking the time to leave a review, and personalize it a little bit. Angie has written about bringing her dog Rocky into Woof here, and the owner mentioned Rocky in the response and looks forward to the next time. The thank yous for positive reviews, they don't need to be all that lengthy, but taking that time to write a sentence or two goes a long way, not just for that client, but again, other people who are reading your listings. I personally manage the review responses for Broadly. If you look us up, we're Broadly, Oakland, California, and you can see our responses to all of our reviews. And I really love providing that personal touch, and I know other readers do as well. It shows that there's a human behind the company, and we're certainly grateful that someone takes the time to write about our software all the time. I want to spend some time, though, on negative reviews, because I know this is where a lot of questions come up, and provide a simple framework for how to navigate this feedback and for how to craft your response online. Because again, the longer you make this wait, or the more reticent you are to provide a response, the worse off you really are. So it really is something that you have to address head on. So I'm going to talk about timeliness. I'm also going to talk about identifying the customer. This is important as part of crafting your response to negative reviews. Additionally, being authentic. You shouldn't feel like you need to be canned in your responses. And importantly, next steps. How to resolve an issue in real time offline, and why that's important. I'm going to talk about all of these steps and what they look like through practical examples. So first, timeliness is key. So I looked at a few facilities in my own area in Colorado to see just what's happening with some of their reviews, and came across this negative review from Rocky Hill Ranch. Now, this was written 3 months ago, and it's about a serious health issue. This person's making a serious accusation about dogs' health at risk with fracking nearby and its effect on the water. And if I'm a pet owner in the area, I'm thinking this is an urgent issue. However, unfortunately, the owner of this business didn't treat it as one. I think that they wrote a fairly nuanced response to this, and you can read this on the screen. I won't read the whole thing here, but my point more about this one, as a consumer, looking through Elsie's lenses here, is that it wasn't taken all that seriously. If Erin's writing about this 3 months ago and it's a legitimate concern, I, as someone who's evaluating this place, take pause. I really question their commitment to this feedback when it's written, nearly 3 months later. These are the things that consumers see, especially on Google, when it shows when the review is written and when that response was written. So it may be, a quality response, but that timeliness is everything. What kind of 5-star business do you want to be? And, how does that play out in the timeliness of your responses? Just something to think about. And one important thing to do to ensure that you are timely is to set up alerts on your listings. If you don't have this set up for Google, every time you get a review, you could be missing these things. And maybe that's what happened in the case of this owner in this facility. So this is really easy to do. I'm going to walk you through the Google example. So I've highlighted the areas that you need to pay attention to. And that's first is signing into Google My Business. If you haven't claimed your page, this is where you would start as well. It's super important to managing your presence on Google and making sure that listing is awesome and accurately reflects your business. You sign in on the upper right, and then you're welcomed with a host of choices. Where I want you to focus now in terms of setting up those alerts is on the left side. You get a lot of choices that will help you interact with and improve your listing, but you scroll down to the left side, you'll see settings. So if you haven't set this up, this is a great way to stay on top of all of the feedback that you get on Google. What happens next? On settings, you can look at your updates. When are you going to get updates about not just reviews, but other things that are happening with Google or with your listings? Make sure that box is checked here with customer reviews. And the awesome part about this is if you have it checked, if you have it set up going to an email that you're monitoring regularly, you're going to get an email every time you get any sort of review, positive or negative, and you're going to be able to act on that quickly. Whether that demands a response online, which will be always, or demands follow-up offline, you're going to be able to act on that timeliness. That's critical, not just for managing that one client's relationship, but also managing your brand online too. So again, if you haven't logged into Google My Business, if you haven't set up these alerts, strongly recommend that you do, because then you'll be able to nip these problems as soon as they arise, not 3 months later. So the next piece of responding to a negative review is finding out on your side what happened. And the reason why I think this is so important is because you might be getting reviews from people who are clients of other facilities, from competitors, or from your actual customers. So it's important on your side, as you're crafting the response, as you're doing it in a timely fashion, to determine the nature of this review and whether it's legit. And this happens a lot, where a review might be written by someone who's confused, or they're using a different name, and you can play a little defense here and get that information out there. So if you are following along here with the example, Nishala Taylor has written about the Divine Canine in Louisville, Colorado, and she said, "Yell and are cruel to dogs. Watch out. 1 star." That's very serious, and everyone would be really crestfallen to get this kind of feedback on their Google listing. But the response, I think, is really good, and of course, it's very timely. Matching that first step of my recommendation for responding. But they respond that they're disheartened about the type of feedback that she's provided and take it very seriously. But they're following this step about identifying the customer. Unfortunately, we've been unable to locate you as a current or former client, and would appreciate more information about your claims so we can address them. Contact us directly. So a lot of these scenarios I hear about where it's a competitor or no one in the database, feel free to put that right in the response. That way everyone else who is looking can become party to exactly what's going on there. And you really put the ball in the hands of Nishala here to follow up and to legitimize that claim, because it's a pretty serious one. But the tone of this response is great in that the owners of Divine Canine are agreeing that this should be addressed right away, and are taking steps to open that dialogue and communication. You talked about timeliness. We're talking about identifying the customer, especially for these scenarios where it's unclear. I want to talk about tone a little bit in the response of negative reviews as well. because this is really tricky. And there's lots of different scenarios that you come across where you're angry, right? This may have been a big dispute offline and you're angry that they've gone online, whether they're a true client or not. And, it's important to keep your cool. The reason for that, again, is because it's not just about that one client reading it. It's about all of your potential clients reading these responses. So I pulled out an example from Black Paw, another example from Louisville. And David has given the facility 1 star. He said he made an appointment for his elderly disabled dog to get a bath, and they were running late. The facility called and said they had to reschedule it for next week. Compassion is extra. And I think the facility wrote a great nuanced response, the owner rather, and was, authentic and kind of meeting this call for compassion in the response too. And what they said was, so sorry for your experience. We do our best to accommodate every dog in a timely fashion. When someone is more than 30 minutes late, it affects every other appointment of the day, causing a chain effect and inconveniencing every other client and their pets for the rest of the day. I'm sure you would understand our desire to give the best experience to all of our clients. What I love about this response is trying to meet David on a human level. They're not going too far down the rabbit hole of tit for tat in what happened, but just laying the facts out there for everyone to see and providing a really solid concluding statement about their desire to provide a great experience for everyone. So again, starting with that apology, providing a quick fact and concluding with what their values are, I think provide a great example of what it means to be authentic and relate on the human level, for these responses. So finally, in my 4th step in crafting that review response to a negative review, I want to talk about what happens next. A lot of people are tempted to get in a war of words online, and it is never worth it. You're never going to win in a dispute online. And the best thing you can really do, once you've identified what the situation was and who the client is and struck the right tone, is to start to take steps to remedy the situation. And here's an example from Black Paw in Louisville. Stephanie Tribby was having issues with their website and was impressed with the experience that they're offering, but clearly had issues. And the owner has taken steps to not only apologize, but fix that issue with the website and reach out. So they're trying to engage with Stephanie offline and providing a direct means of getting in touch. And so they provided their phone number here and want to take steps to not really air out all of the claims online, but make sure that the client is happy offline. So I love that they provided the phone number here. And my recommendation here would be provide more than one way for people to get in touch. If you've reached out to the client, not gotten a response, make sure they have the right phone number, give them your email address. People might have their different preferences for communicating. And, it's important to meet them at that point of convenience for them, right? They may be on the go a lot. They may prefer a text or an email over a call. And you just want to make sure that it's easy for them to follow up with you and that you can resolve these things quickly. Again, not so much about airing out all of the details online, but showing the client and showing your readers that you are committed to taking steps and remedying this situation. I've taken you through 4 steps, again, for responding to negative reviews. That includes making it timely, setting up those alerts on Google, on Yelp, making sure you're getting that alert right away, identifying the customer, you're making sure that they are someone who's in your database, that they can be verified. Once you've made that decision, working on the tone of your response, making sure it's not canned, making sure that there's a human behind that response, and then finally taking steps to remedy the situation offline. That review is just the beginning of the conversation, but your response and your speed in taking care of the situation will be noticed and valued by other people who are considering your facility. So I know that's a lot of information, but these are just some of the ways where you can build that 5-star reputation and be that 5-star business that is known and the best in your community. And with a great reputation, you can charge more for the great service and love and care that you provide to a homeowner's pets. And that's what we're all striving for, right? A great reputation online pays dividends. It will manifest itself in more revenue for your facility. I do want to leave some time though for Q&A, and I'm sure some questions have been coming in. So I'll leave this information here on the slide as we talk through some of your scenarios or detailed questions on what I've covered so far.
Yes, that was great information, Laura. Thanks so much for presenting that. We did immediately start getting questions about negative reviews. So that is often the biggest question. And you mentioned, we'll have about 15 minutes for questions, and I'll answer as many as we can get to, or I'll ask as many as we can get to for Laura to answer. If you have questions, just put them in that chat box and I'll kind of be going through there to pick them out. And Laura, you kind of talked a little bit about, addressing the we can't find you in our database sort of thing, but are there any other suggestions if people are seeing fake negative reviews? Is it really just sort of calling them out to say, like, we have no idea who you are?
Yeah, I think that's the first step. It is saying, do you go by another name? Please provide us more information, because we'd love to help you work toward a resolution. But yeah, if the name's not matching the database right away, you can't really dig into the problem, right?
Right. Okay. And then a couple of people had asked, and you addressed this a little bit, but when you get sort of the person who's just trying to get revenge and they're putting a negative review out there, and one person said most their negative reviews usually come after they've talked to the client and the client hasn't gotten what they've wanted, usually some kind of reduction in fees. Is that really just kind of going back to some of the tips you already said with just explaining what happened and trying to take it offline so that they can contact you for more information? Or do you have any other advice on that?
Yeah, that's an interesting one. And, it is disheartening to see when people have, already had this, they've already worked through some sort of resolution, and yet the client feels the need to go online. I do think a lot of those rules still apply, right? You want to be the bigger person, reply online in a timely manner, provide a little more information, and of course that offline response. It is worth putting a line in that you have been working on the problem. The readers don't need to know all of the details, but it is worth addressing as part of that response. And I will say something else, like it is nearly impossible to have an untarnished reputation online. Every business is going to have some negative reviews. That's just the name of the game. The positive reviews, if you're a great business, the positive reviews are going to overpower those. So readers do keep in mind that there's always one or two crazy people on a page who are never going to be satisfied, etc. So, it's not so much about you as the owner, and it becomes more about, that person being unreasonable. And, There's something like fees too. Like you don't want to be the cheapest in your community. You want to be the ones who provide the best service and pay your employees fairly and, invest in your facility as well. So yeah, in a situation like that, I think it's worth pointing out that, you don't reduce fees because you want to make sure everything is top notch.
Right. And then, okay, one more on negative reviews, and then I'll ask some other questions.
Sure.
This is a good one because how do you handle former employee negative reviews? Obviously, there's HR issues going and how much you can say. So that's a good. What do you do if it's a former employee that's giving those negative reviews?
Yeah, some of that, the timeliness certainly applies, and you can acknowledge, depending on the scenario, of course, you can say this is a former employee of the company. We cannot dive into specifics to protect both sides, and we would love to resolve this offline. And unfortunately, that's all that you can really say. But as soon as you note former employee, the readers will have a heads up that this person is likely disgruntled.
Yeah, that's a delicate one because there are HR rules that really prohibit you from talking too much about it. But
yeah,
I do like just saying, this isn't a former employee, which sort of gives people a heads up.
Yeah.
Okay. We had a couple questions on where you should post reviews. So I'm going to kind of lump them all together and you can talk about it in general, but a couple of people were asking like, where's the best place for reviews to be posted? Obviously if they're on Facebook, they're on Facebook, but
yeah.
else had asked, should I take positive reviews and post them somewhere else? Or, where should those things show up? Should they have more exposure than maybe just the platform they're on?
Absolutely. And there are tools where you can do this as well. First, I'll talk about the different platforms, right? Like Google is number one. Google rules all of our lives. We're starting our search from there in a lot of scenarios. So you're going to get a lot of bang for your buck by having great Google reviews. And it factors into your SEO. So it's never a bad thing to have Google reviews. Facebook, people are spending a lot of time on the platform, not even leaving the platform to solve problems like these. So that's another great area. Yelp is where things get a little trickier. Yelp is more popular in some communities than others. We work with clients who are desperate to get a better Yelp presence, and we also work with some who are like, they don't want to deal with Yelp. They don't want to interact with their page, and that's totally fine. So there's been a lot of mixed experiences on the business side with that, but I won't get into details there. Then you think about other platforms, like, for instance, Nextdoor is an up-and-coming platform that is really popular in some communities and gaining more exposure in others. So if you're not on Nextdoor, I highly recommend you check it out, see what's happening in your neighborhood. It is a private social network. You have to get verified. You buy a postcard, buy your address to join. And there is a lot of chatter on there because it is so hyper focused to a certain community. Then you talked about, or you asked about rather, maximizing the benefit of these reviews. And I think that's really important. Like, for instance, if you get a great review on Google, can and should you share that on Facebook? Absolutely. You might have to manually cut and paste it to create a Facebook post, just for example. But I think that's a great idea, just to make sure that people are seeing feedback across platforms. And of course, it creates a new piece of content to share elsewhere. And there's also tools, and Broadly has a tool that helps with this as well. We help stream the reviews onto the website too. I see a lot of people like cut and paste great reviews from Google, Facebook, elsewhere onto the reviews. Broadly helps automate that so that it becomes automatic, and then publishes the reviews as original content and helps boost SEO. That's just one option. There's other options out there that do something like that. But again, that's just kind of double dipping in the benefit of the review and kind of taking out kind of the manual process of reposting that. Because, of course, not everyone has their own marketing manager or person who can be dedicated to that every hour of the day.
Yeah, that's awesome. I was actually on somebody's website the other day who had that, and I read the top part of their website. I kind of scanned through it, and then the bottom, it was all these like really recent reviews, and I ended up spending most of my time reading their reviews instead of looking for what I want to know. It's funny how your brain just goes to like, let me look at these reviews. But I think I don't know if they were using Broadly, but they were using it looked like some kind of system to do that, which I thought was cool.
Yeah.
And this other person, and I have a comment about this one too, he said, I know I'm busy and seldom leave reviews unless the service was horribly bad. Would you advise against some sort of reward or compensation for clients' time in the form of business credit or services for if they leave a good review, obviously?
Yeah. So I get this question a lot because you're right. If there's no proactive system in place, it's going to be the most unsatisfied people who run and leave a review. And that's not a great strategy. Your best strategy is offense and activating the happy people. And I've seen people offer Starbucks gift cards or things along those lines for giving a review. You do have to offer that to anyone who writes a review. It can't just be for a positive review. And in some scenarios where you do it just for a positive review, you have to put a SEC disclaimer on there. So it becomes a little more tricky in those scenarios. I just kind of circle back to if it's easy, if people love the experience, they're happy to do it. I don't think that you need to give them a free coffee to go ahead and do this. I think the money is better spent in technology to automate that process for you.
So the funny thing about this, and I'm like Patrick, who was the one that left that comment. I'm the one that doesn't necessarily always leave reviews.
Mm-hmm.
A bad review and have something to complain about, then of course, that's true of all of us. We always tell people negative things. But in the past week, I've actually left 2 reviews. Actually, in the past month, I've left 2 reviews, positive reviews on different service companies. And the only reason was because it was automated. Like literally my dentist was one. And as I was leaving the dentist, and I had a cap put on, so it wasn't like, I had to get shots and everything. And then as I was leaving, the dentist said, well, I would love if you, wouldn't mind reviewing. I'm going to send you a text in a day and blah, blah, blah. And so I got that text, and sure enough, I just clicked the link and the review was like already, the process was simple. So I left them a good review. And then I just went to the airport. I took an airport shuttle, and they were the same thing. I wasn't even thinking about any kind of review for them. And then I got a text that said, we would love if you would give us a review. And I clicked on the link. And for that one, the 5-star review was already written. And
wow.
I said, yes, I agree with that. And so it just made me think, like, I don't usually leave reviews, but because that was so easy, I went ahead and did it.
Yeah. And I love how the dentist prompted that. They said this is important to us, expect it to come. So it wasn't totally out of the blue.
Right. Yeah. So I just think that's interesting. I think we maybe underestimate the value of just that automation piece and how easy that would be for people to do it. Because I don't think they don't leave reviews because they don't like you. I think it's just this time issue.
Yeah. And they just don't, we're used to it for, say, a restaurant or something like that, because people are happy to do it. They've historically been doing it a lot, but we just don't think about how important it might be to someone like, a carpet cleaner or someone who's taking care of our pets, like how much credibility that holds when, they're trying to grow and attract more clients.
Right. And then someone had asked, how much time do you spend personally, Laura, because you had mentioned that you post comments on Broadly's site. Like, how much time do you spend doing that and reviewing your reviews each week?
Not a ton of time. I respond to them almost as soon as I get that Google alert. So if you go to our Google listing and kind of see how frequently they're written. We get maybe, 2 or 3 a day, or it varies, but I just spend a little bit of time making sure that I'm not using the same adjectives. I'm not coming across as canned. Like, I want to sound professional, but not robotic. So I try to mirror what they said. If someone says they got a great return on investment, I want to say, we're so glad that this is a great investment for you, things like that. But not, I would say collectively, maybe an hour, because I also share out that feedback with the team on our internal chat and make sure that people who are working with that client get a shout out as well. And that's something I didn't really talk about, but I think is important. It's a great way to incentivize people, or just let them know that they're appreciated, by sharing great feedback across the whole team.
Yeah, that's so important. And I think sometimes we forget to celebrate that stuff with our teams.
Yeah. And, negative feedback, I think, should be dealt with a little, more privately, of course.
Well, yeah, of course.
You may see patterns across team members as well. Broadly is able to help determine which reviews go with which team members, and, or you can just do that, manually too. And there may be some patterns across team members where you can give them constructive feedback on how to improve.
Awesome. Okay, we have about 3 minutes, so I'm going to get to as many of these questions. We're probably not going to be able to cover all of them because there's still lots in there. But Michelle had asked, once you resolve an issue, if someone leaves a negative review and then it gets resolved, is it okay to ask that client to update their review?
Yeah, that is a tricky one. I've seen that done successfully. I think it really just depends on your comfort level and kind of where you left things with that client, and how that whole resolution and interaction ended. If you're comfortable doing it, I don't see why not. Hey, like, we've resolved this. I think that deserves an update on Google. Right? There's kind of like tactful ways you can do that. Like, do you mind updating your review to reflect what we worked through? And, some might do it, some might not. I don't think it hurts to ask if you feel comfortable doing it.
Right. Okay. And then another question. Wait, I just lost it a second ago. Okay. So you might need more details for this one, but it says, what do you think about sending feedback forms automatically, and then based on those results, sending a direct link to the Google My Business?
Mm-hmm. I believe that that's a great process. I guess I'm envisioning how it's worded here. It's a 2-step process of maybe you're sending the Google links to certain people. So you're getting their feedback privately, potentially, and then asking for a review. It could work. We do get, as a society, sometimes survey fatigue. So the more you ask sometimes, or the more you ask for, rather, sometimes the less you will get. So you'd be mindful of that. If they provided feedback in one format, maybe a little less likely to do it again, but see how it works.
Okay. And then kind of along the similar lines, is someone had asked, do you think it's too much if we use broadly and then also send us more specific survey?
I've seen that work time to time. What we've done is our account managers work with clients and just understand their communications cadence. If you space things out or you follow up with a subset of customers, it can work. I wouldn't hit them like in consecutive days, but we do see that where different types of surveys are sent out. Maybe a review is sent out right after picking up the pet, and then like 3 months later, something more detailed, or whatever the right timing feels like, so they're not overloaded.
Awesome. Do you have any last comments, Laura? Because if not, I'll close out, but I'll just ask you if you have any last minute comments before I do that.
Oh, not really. I have my information on the screen. So if anything we didn't discuss comes top of mind, feel free to reach out to me. That's my phone number. I'm at laura@broadly.com. I'm happy to assist.
Yeah, and I will just say thanks for everyone for joining on this call. And obviously, if you want to see how you can automate a lot of this stuff, I would definitely check out broadly.com. We asked Laura to be here because of just how much their company obviously deals with all of the automation behind this stuff. And they obviously have done a lot of research and understand the kind of the psychology behind reviews and how that can help and how to get them. And more importantly, how to automate it, because we're all busy business owners that don't necessarily have time to do all of this manually. So definitely check out Broadly and see how they can help you. And if you have questions on any of this, or if we didn't get to your question on the webinar, feel free to reach out to Laura and she'll be happy to help you. And Laura, thank you so much for being on and for providing so much great information. And I'm sure I will see you at a upcoming conference.
Can't wait. Thanks so much, Robin.
All right. Bye.
Bye.